on to maintaining mental confidence. So as we start this section, I thought it would just be helpful to provide you just with a little bit of background about myself and why this is an area of interest to me. So I have been with the profession coming up on 14 years now, and I studied psychology at university, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And it's definitely become part of my everyday life. And I really consider myself to be a lifetime psychology enthusiast, is often what I will refer to myself as. So I am not a psychologist, but in addition to studying it at university, we had the good fortune, the very good fortune, of having a psychologist on staff at CPA BC who taught me much of what I'm going to share with you tonight. So it's coming from a really great source. And again, we really just hope that you find it to be helpful, not only in your preparation for the CFE, but also during the writing of the CFE itself. So mental preparation starts today. So remember, you only have one brain that comes with you everywhere. So the same brain that you are studying with is the same brain that you go to work with or you do your work with. And it's the same brain that comes with you into the grocery store and makes all those fantastic food choices. And it's the same brain that comes home with you into your relationships. And it's going to be the same brain that you're going to bring with you into the exam that day. So in other words, you don't miraculously have another brain that comes with you into the exam. It's the one that's been following you around everywhere. So we have a huge opportunity here to really shape your brain for the brain you want to have with you on exam day. So every thought we have is a neural circuit, and neurons that fire together wire together. So if you think about that for a moment, every thought. So our neurons are our brain cells, and every thought that we think, there are a certain pattern of neurons that are lighting up in our brains. And the more we think that thought, the more likely those neurons are to wire together. So because of this, our brains are considered to be plastic. Now, when I say plastic, I don't mean like Fisher-Price plastic. I mean changeable because of this wiring. Many of you have probably heard the term neuroplasticity, and that's exactly what it is. It is the brain's incredible ability to change and to reshape itself in response to experience. So to be ready for exam day, if you devote consistent effort starting now to ensuring that your neural circuitry is wired for success, then you are doing yourself the best service possible. So we're going to learn how to do that. So I've broken it down into a step process just to make it easy for us to go through and for you to think back to, hopefully. So starting with step one, which is to tune into your inner dialogue. So what is your inner dialogue? Well, it's the voice of our thoughts, that chatter that's sort of constantly going on in the background of our mind oh, I have to email this person. Oh, tomorrow's garbage day. Oh, I have to, get my clothes ready for tomorrow. Oh, I hope my coworker isn't mad at me. All these things that are sort of fluttering around in the back of our mind is referred to as our mind chatter. So when we tune into our thoughts, it gives us an opportunity to interpret how you are experiencing the world, and therefore how you can change it. Remember, bringing us back to this idea of wiring and this plasticity that our brains have. So when we do so, and when we tune into this inner dialogue, we have the opportunity to see what messages we are sending ourselves. So we start to become aware. We start to become aware of our thoughts and tune into what we are perhaps catching ourselves saying. Now, some people who approach this tactic, what they will do is they'll keep a notebook. They'll keep a notebook with them, and they will check in with themselves at various points of the day to see what's going on in their mind chatter. So they'll start at the beginning of the day, shortly after they wake up, and they'll sort of jot down, okay, what are the frequent things that are popping into my head? Lunchtime, what's going on in there? Jot it down. Afternoon, dinner time, before bed. And then they have a cross section of what they are frequently saying to themselves throughout the course of the day. So for yourselves, and as you prepare for your CFE, maybe some of these things are popping up. So I'm probably going to fail this exam. I'm not smart enough. I'm not ready. I can't take the pressure. So maybe thoughts like this are starting to pop up. So what's important to remember is that if our typical pattern of thought to challenging situations tends to be critical or negative, the greater our tendency to apply this negative thinking to future challenging situations. Again, bringing us back to this idea of neurons that fire together, wire together. We start to strengthen our circuitry for negativity when we constantly are looping and constantly trapped in these negative thought patterns. So we begin to wire our brains to automatically respond negatively. So, we don't want to go here. We don't want to go here. But what happens when we do is contributing to our state of stress. So negative thinking is fear-based thinking, and fear breeds stress. So stress, of course, is new to none of us here, but sometimes it's a little bit interesting to dissect a little bit to have a better understanding of it. So it's very easy to remember the ways in which stress manifests. So it's the 3 F's. So fight, so you want to become aggressive. Flight, you want to escape, you want to flee to safety. Or freeze, which is just you locking up and hoping that a predator will make its way past you without noticing, is where that evolved from in our prehistoric ancestry. But the stress reaction, it evokes our entire physiology. You feel it, right? You feel your heart rate going up, you start to sweat, you feel your blood going to your extremities, your digestion stops, essentially, our eyesight narrows. So our whole physiology is really pulled into this stress response. And there's a region of our brains called the amygdala that is particularly reactive during this reaction. So you may have heard the amygdala referred to as our monkey brain or our lizard brain, but again, it's this very ancient region of the brain where this reaction originated. So our amygdala governs extreme emotions, reactivity, impulsivity are all very common within the amygdala. But the stress reaction, it evolved in order to keep us alive whenever our existence was brought into question or brought into threat. And it does its job very well. I mean, we're all here, right? So its job was to keep us alive, and it has stood the test of time, which is why this reaction is still with us today. But if you look at this state, does this look like the ideal state that you would want to be in for the sake of your exam or the sake of performance? Of course not. Of course not, right? You don't want to feel like you're running scared during your exam. But so often candidates will say, well, this is actually exactly what I feel like during my exam. So why is this? Why is this when we need our brains to be our best ally, that so often it feels like they're our worst enemy in so many instances? Well, if you have ever heard the quote or the statement, our brains are designed to keep us safe, they are not designed to make us successful. This is absolutely true. This is absolutely true. And there's a lot of evidence pointing in that direction. So for example, even our ability to recall memories, our brains prioritize the memory of negative things that have happened to us. Psychologists call this that these negative thoughts are like Velcro in our mind. They stick very readily. And really, our brains have prioritized them because anything that was negative had the potential to kill us. So, okay, yeah, I guess that would be kind of important to keep as a priority versus wonderful things that have happened in our life. Many times, those memories are like what psychologists say Teflon. They just often slide right off. We often have a hard time remembering wonderful things that have happened to us. So, in terms of our recollection, in addition, psychologists estimate that up to 75% of our thoughts are negative. And of that 75%, 90% is what you thought yesterday. So we have this predisposition to negativity. But does that mean that this is your fate? This is your destiny to think negatively and only be preoccupied with survival? Of course not. Of course not. But what it does mean is things like success, performance, and even happiness require intentional measures to override this default circuitry that we have. So it's not your fate, it's not your destiny, but it is a call to action that you really need to take your own wiring into your own hands, so to speak, and to really shape it to support your goals and to support your success. So on to step number 2, which is to challenge your thoughts. This is also an important step because remember, just because you think something doesn't make it real or true. You would be surprised how much junk we have floating up in our heads that is just taking up space in our mental bandwidth that is actually false, but that we have convinced ourselves of. So in this process of challenging your thoughts, it's very important to really give a filtering to these thoughts and to really challenge them, to see what's left. So in doing so, you can ask yourself the following questions. So is my thinking accurate or true? What evidence is there? If you think something, what evidence really is there to support that? Am I catastrophizing? So catastrophizing is something that we're all very good at. Usually, this is when we say, what if? So, what if the power goes out during my exam? Or what if I completely blank out? What if I get hungry during the exam? What if I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the exam? I'm going to lose at least 2 minutes, da 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 da. And our mind goes off on tangents. So be careful of the catastrophizing and identify it if it's happening. Am I jumping to conclusions? am I looking at the whole situation? So again, this step in the process is so important because it gives you a chance to lay to rest what is false or not serving you optimally, and that you can just be clearing out and making space for thoughts that are more supportive to your efforts. So on to step number 3, which is cognitive reframing. So with cognitive reframing, this is you stepping back. This is you stepping back and looking at your situation from a more holistic perspective. So in doing so, you will ask yourself the following questions. So is there another way of looking at my situation? How would you view the situation if a friend were going through it? And I love this one because it becomes so clear. So if you had a friend who was nervous about a big exam that was coming up, what is the first thing that you would do for your friend? You would encourage them, you would remind them of their strengths, and you would remind them that they have the capacity to do this. You would most likely not say to them, you probably should quit. Remember how you freak out? This is going to be way too hard. You would never say that to a friend. And I always find it so funny how we're so terrific to our friends. We always encourage them, but so rarely do we extend that same encouragement to ourselves. So stepping back and offering yourself a more objective and wholesome perspective is really what cognitive reframing is doing for you. So step 4 is to embrace self-compassion. So we're shifting, right? We're shifting. We started in this panicked amygdala dominant state, and we've challenged our thoughts, and we've filtered out those false thoughts that aren't serving us, and we've stepped back and we're looking at our situation from a holistic perspective. And then we arrive in this beautiful place of embracing self-compassion. So a little birdie told me that as CAP 2 candidates, you are particularly ambitious, particularly driven, and particularly hard on yourselves. That's not true, is it? I hear chuckling out there. So consider this step in the process a big permission slip to cut yourselves some slack sometimes, and I'll share the importance of doing so. So self-compassion allows you to acknowledge that a particular mistake could happen to anyone. We are not immune to mistakes, nor are others. And it allows you to be realistic and to admit to weaknesses and to see them as changeable. Now, this is key. This is really key, to see weaknesses as changeable, because then we are more likely to take action towards strengthening them. And when we take action towards strengthening them, we feel empowered. And when we feel empowered, we feel confident. So it really does follow this trajectory. And it is really important to not view weaknesses as something to be feared. They are not, because that just pulls us way back, right? That just pulls us way back into that amygdala dominant state. So we're shifting now, and we are in a completely different area of our brain, and self-compassion takes place in what is called our prefrontal cortex. So if you take your hand and you put it over top of your forehead, this is where your prefrontal cortex is located. So our prefrontal cortex, this is our human brain. This is the brain that we evolved to have past our evolutionary roots, which, that was designed to keep us alive. But the prefrontal cortex allows us to thrive in the social world. And it's also referred to as our heart brain as well. So why is this important, and why is this even relevant to the writing of your exam? Well, the prefrontal cortex, it governs your executive functions. So things like decision-making, planning, logical reasoning are all residing in this prefrontal cortex, which of course, all these abilities you want to have on point while you are writing your exam. In addition, it governs controlled emotions. So compassion for self and others, empathy, sympathy, trust. This is all happening in this prefrontal cortex. So it allows for not only your executive functions to thrive, but to do so in an emotional state of complete self-acceptance. So this is the big heart. This is the big heart. Self-compassion, very important. So bringing self-compassion into action. So remember, you need to remind yourself of your strengths and the skills that you have working in your favor. Remember this predisposition to negativity that we have. You need to remind yourself of what you have working in your favor. So you need to be able to say, you know what? I got a lot of great things going for me. I have been studying ridiculously hard. I've got some great strategies on how to manage my time. I'm great at analysis. I'm a fantastic writer. I just need to keep it in the allowable time. But you need to remind yourself of your strengths so that your perspective is whole. Be honest with yourself about your areas of growth and take action towards strengthening them. And we talked about that and building your confidence. So an example statement coming from this place of self-compassion would be the following. So it's natural or normal to feel nervous on exam day, or I guess I should say days. I have done the work. I have prepared myself to the best of my ability. I am ready. And then we arrive at step 5, which is to trust and detach from outcome. Now, this is a growth process. So the later steps in the process are always more challenging, but they're also very important as well. So there comes a time. There comes a time in your studying. There comes a time in your career too, that you just need to trust yourself. You trust the skills that you have developed to maneuver through challenge, but you don't just trust that. You trust your journey, you trust the process of life. Sometimes there are lessons for us to learn. And then we detach from desired outcome. For yourselves, I know that at this point of your CPA journey, you are so ready. You're so ready to be done. You're so ready to be past your CP and, wrap up practical experience and to have your designation and to be moving on with your career. And you probably feel like, oh my God, I've been studying so long. Is this over yet? So it's certainly okay that that's a goal for you. And I know that that's crystal clear in your mind. But what we don't want to have happen is that you attach yourself to this end goal because it creates a burden. And then we become like Atlas, Atlas from Greek mythology, who carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. So how can you perform with a huge globe on your shoulders? You can't. You can't. So it's important to be able to let go and to focus on what you can control, which is your thoughts and your actions. And this step in the process always reminds me of the Olympics or any athlete at a major event, a world-class athlete at a major event for that matter. And you can look for this whenever there's a title or medalist that are being interviewed. So often the interviewers will ask a question somewhere along the lines of, and how did you handle the pressure? And so often these world-class athletes will respond with, well, I just focused on what I needed to do. And you always want there to be more to that answer, but at the end of the day, they really have mastered this art of detaching from this desired outcome and really made what they can control be their focus, which again is their thoughts and their actions. So this is really the take-home message of this step in the process, and to really make your focus. Okay, so here we are at step 6, which is practice methods to calm the mind. So some of you are listening to steps 1 to 5 and thinking, yeah, okay, I sort of see where she's coming from, but maybe you could give me something to do in order to calm or to clear my mind. So absolutely, step 6 is for people who prefer a little bit more of a practical approach to calming the mind. And so I've listed out a few, and we'll go through each one of them, and I'll explain what each one of them is about. And really, I've chosen these because they are very easy to slot into your day. They're not going to take very long. And as I will always say, that all of us need something that helps us manage both long-term stress as well as short-term stress. And that's what you'll be sort of feeling as you're going through your exam on exam day. So having these tools that work for you are so vital for your career, for your health. We all need these. So hopefully some or one of these resonates with you. Okay, so let's start off with mindfulness meditation. So this is probably not new for any of you. In fact, some of you perhaps already do mindfulness meditation, and that's great if that's the case. And gosh, there's so much evidence that we are seeing as to what the benefits of mindfulness meditation are. But I thought for tonight, what I would do is just make it relevant to you. And I would talk about how mindfulness meditation supports your concentration, because your concentration is so vital during your exam to make sure everything is flowing as efficiently as possible so that you can stay within those very tight timelines that you have. So I'm also going to teach you a very, very simple method that you can use in order to practice mindfulness meditation. So why don't we start with that? So with mindfulness meditation, the key aspect to keep in mind is it's teaching you to be able to focus on one thing. And psychologists call this sustained presence. Really, sustained moment-to-moment presence is often how they refer to it. So the very simple process is you find a quiet place, wherever that might be, no distractions, you close your eyes, and you focus on this one thing. So often what people will use is simply their breath, but you can also use a candle, or some people use a picture as well, and that's certainly fine. But many times it is the breath. So just feeling the sensations of the breath, the inhale and the exhale, and not controlling the breath, but just allowing it to go at whatever pace that it goes at. And inevitably what will happen is that your mind is going to wander, and then you just gently bring it back to the breath. And then the mind is probably going to wander again, and then you bring it back. And anytime that happens, you just continue to bring that attention back to the breath. Now, You really don't have to practice this very, very simple method for very long in order to experience the benefits. You will already be noticing benefits in even 5 to 10 minutes if you do it consistently. You don't have to feel like that it's only beneficial if you do it for an hour. Of course, it's beneficial if you do it for an hour, but you don't need to do it that long either. So consistency really is key. So that is the very super simple method that you can practice. Now, how does this support our concentration? Well, when we look at the psychology of it all, what we learn is that the mind is designed to wander 50% of the time. See, it's not your fault. This is all your hardwiring. So why is this? Well, our brains are constantly scanning our environment for threat. It just wants to keep us alive. It just wants to help us see the light of another day. So the wandering mind is inevitably going to happen during meditation. So again, you choose your focal point that you're focusing on. Again, in this example, we'll use the breath. And so you focus on the breath and the mind wanders, and then you bring it back. And the mind wanders again, and then you bring it back. And it wanders and you bring it back. And every single time you bring your attention back to the breath, you are strengthening your neural circuitry for concentration. Isn't that cool? It's very much like a muscle. The more you train and you work a muscle, the stronger it gets and the easier it is to carry out that move. It's the same idea when it comes to meditation. Your ability to focus on that one thing will improve over time. Okay, so that's mindfulness meditation. And again, doesn't need to be long, 5 or 10 minutes a day, and you will notice the benefits. So next is active mindfulness. And I always tell the story on this one of a webinar that I went to that was being delivered by a psychologist. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to lie. Mindfulness meditation is not for me. And we all went, whoo, thank goodness. You know, you're not weird if it doesn't work for you. In fact, some people actually fall asleep when they're meditating, and that's okay. It's certainly not for everyone. But instead, she practices active mindfulness. So the principles are the same between active mindfulness and mindfulness meditation. The only difference is that in active mindfulness, it's carried out in an active state versus a meditative state. So how does it work? Well, what people will often do is they will apply the active mindfulness to a span of time. And usually the easiest span of time is in the preparation of a simple meal. So for example, as you're preparing breakfast, you'll say, okay, I'm going to practice active mindfulness during this time. So, you know, you focus on what you're doing. You put your toast in the toaster and you push it down, and you focus on what it feels like to push the button down. And then you make your coffee and you watch the water as it pours out of the kettle, and you are completely immersed in what you are doing. You are not thinking about your to-do list, and you're not thinking about everyone you haven't emailed and all the projects you haven't started yet. You're not thinking about any of those things, but that simple action. Okay, so again, it's a very practical type of method of mindfulness and can be very easily integrated and brought into your life. So next, we have the physiological sigh. And I will confess, this is a new breathing method that I've really just learned about, but it is so great. I was excited to be able to share it during this session. So the physiological sigh, as it turns out, really is Mother Nature's gift to us in managing stressful situations in the thick of that stressful event. And so what I thought I would do is just show a very simple demonstration of what it is and why it is that it is effective or helpful to us in this way. So the breathing method is that you take a double inhale. Okay, so I'm gonna explain it first and then I'll demonstrate it. So you take a double inhale and then you do a long extended exhale. So it would look something like this. You'd go, okay. So very simple, but what's the physiology behind this? Why does it work? Well, when it comes to your heart rate, when we breathe in, our heart rate increases. When we exhale, our heart rate decreases. So when you have a nice extended exhale, you're giving your heartbeat several beats to slow down and to slow down and to slow down. Okay. They say, the psychologists will quote that oftentimes 2 or 3 physiological sighs with just a few natural breaths in between really helps bring your physiology back in check. So again, very simple to be able to apply anytime that you need it. And wonderful different examples when you think about it within kind of everyday life. Many times as you're falling asleep, you'll catch yourself doing kind of a natural sigh, right? And so that really is just your body getting rid of sort of some excess CO2. But often we will see babies do this, right? So when they cry, they go, and then they cry it all out. And, we've come to see this as just part of their crying pattern. But in truth, physiologically, this is innately them trying to calm themselves. So it's a very natural, again, breathing method, Mother Nature's gift to us to help keep us calm in stressful situations. So next, we have alternate nostril breathing. And this one is my favorite. I do this one all the time. I throw it into my day anytime that I need it. I often do it before Zoom calls or after Zoom calls, but it is a wonderful mental reset that you can use anytime that you need it. So again, I'm going to do a quick demonstration so that you know what it's all about. So what you'll do is you're going to take your pinky and your thumb. And a lot of times people also teach putting your 2 fingers on your forehead as you do this. I just find that annoying. So that's why I just use my pinky and my thumb. So what you do is you plug one of your nostrils and you do an exhale and an inhale. So you'd go something like this. You go exhale and inhale. And then you plug the other nostril and you release. And then you do the same thing. You do an exhale and an inhale. And then you repeat. And you can do this as many rounds as you feel like you need. Often people will do between 5 to 10 rounds. You can even do it for a few minutes if you feel like you need that. But it really just helps calm the mind. It helps calm the emotions. It helps to restore balance between the two hemispheres within your brain. There is a theory that when we are stressed, that we breathe dominantly through one of our nostrils. So this breathing method helps to restore that balance. And it's a wonderful mental reset. I often find that when you've been reading a long time and you've got sort of a tension headache, a few rounds of alternate nostril breathing can be really, really helpful. So that's a favorite for me. Next, we have tapping, or emotional freedom training, or EFT, you might have referred to it as well. And this one is a little different. I would say that tapping has probably been around since probably around the 90s. It took off and it's been sort of fluttering around ever since. But also with a multitude of applications. My goodness, some people will use it to quit smoking. It's used for chronic pain, to cut cravings, all sorts of different applications. But how it works, or what it is, it's a hybrid between Chinese medicine, acupressure points, and psychology. So how does it work? So you have these different pressure points. There's 9 altogether. So there's one on the top of your head, There's one on the inside of your eyebrow. There's one on the outside of your eyebrow. There's two below your eyes. There's one here under your nose, one under your chin, one on your collarbone, and two on either sides of your body, just underneath your armpits. But what you do, oh, sorry, last one, is just on the side of your hand. So what you do is you tap these pressure points one by one. So I'll just use this one as an example. And you identify what emotion you are feeling. So maybe that's scared. So you'll say, although I am currently feeling, and you insert whatever emotion it is, scared, I completely and totally accept myself. So the idea is that this tapping, you are allowing that the emotion be released as opposed to being trapped within the nervous system. It is allowing that a chance for that emotion to be released and to feed back to the nervous system, the amygdala in particular, that you are safe and that you are not being threatened and that it doesn't need to enact its reactions. So again, a little bit different, but the whole circuit really doesn't take very long. The whole thing probably takes less than 5 minutes. But again, then another one of its applications is to just create a sense of calm in the nervous system. So in the next slide, I have a few resources available to you. And so there's a link to further information that you can look up a little bit more about that. And then finally, just stretches and light activity. It's really, really important that as you're studying long hours, that you take those breaks and move around, move your body, stretch it out, so that you're not getting so much tension, collecting in different places. Really important to keep the blood flow up. And I know it's really hard to take those breaks because a lot of times you get sort of drawn into what you're doing, and then you look at your clock and you're like, oh my God, I haven't stood up for like 2.5 hours. But really try and set a reminder so that you are getting up and you are stretching and you are moving things around. Okay, so quick summary here of all the steps. So step 1 was to tune into your inner dialogue. Step 2 was to challenge your thoughts and to lay to rest what is false. Step 3, to cognitively reframe and step back and look at your situation from that holistic perspective. Step 4, to embrace self-compassion. Step 5, to trust and detach from outcome. And then finally, step 6, to find a practice method to calm the mind. And then finally, start today. If you can, remember you want to shape that brain for the brain that you want to have with you during your exam. So again, some references and some further reading for you to dive into. None of these are long. They're all nice and short. They won't take too long for you to learn about, but some on hand that you can refer to if you have found this to be helpful. Okay, well, thank you everyone for your kind attention.